Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. Hope you're having a great first day of the conference. I'm Victor, and I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Synthesia. For those of you who don't know Synthesia, we're the world's largest AI video platform for businesses. We essentially help our customers create video content without having to use cameras, actors, studios, and microphones, but using AI. And we help you through the entire life cycle of the video. We generate avatar videos or world videos with AI. So you edit it together, you collaborate on it, content management, translation, and much, much more. I think that in 5 years from now, we will very rarely just be watching videos, especially at work. There's this interesting thing with humans, which is that when we invent new technologies, we generally always invent new media formats that are native to those technologies. So if you look at something like the first website kind of looked like a newspaper on a screen, because that was kind of what we could imagine at the time. Then we experimented a lot. We invented a lot of new web technologies. We figured out that a website is actually very different than a newspaper, right? We can do so many more things with a website. We can update it in real time. We can personalize it to everyone. We can connect people in a comment section. And with one click, you can access the entirety of the internet. And so what has happened since the first website was developed is that today websites and physical newspapers are very, very different media formats, right? And the website is enabled by technology. Now, if we look at video, video hasn't really changed that much since it was invented 75 years ago. A lot has happened in video. We all have smartphones that we bring with us everywhere, and we record things in an instant. We can share our videos online, and the world is really being eaten up by video. But if you look at the core video format, it's actually still mostly the same. It's still a static broadcast. We record it once, and everybody watches exactly the same version of that video, right, on YouTube or cable TV or whatever. That's actually pretty similar to the physical newspaper, right? You print it once, you distribute it to everyone, and then the day after, you print a new one, and you distribute it to everyone. But this is about to change. Since we founded the company back in 2017, we've seen the rise of amazing AI technology. And I think of it as these new sort of primes that's going to enable next generation video. The first prime is very obviously the actual content creation. Today, we can generate incredibly realistic video, voice, and images through prompts. It's almost instant, it's very affordable, and it's very, very easy, as I'm sure many of you in the audience already know. And while there's still some way to go before we can make Hollywood films on laptops, we're really not that far off, right? It's a matter of years before we're there. So that's the first and very important prime. The second one is, of course, LLMs, language models. Our computers have become intelligent. It's very different from the software we knew 5 years ago. We can interact with it. Machines can think for us. And we've already seen the rise of the first new media format that essentially took its roots in LLMs, right? Chat is a new modality. We didn't used to chat with our computers, but that's now the media format that most of us use these new technologies with. And the last one is we've seen a rise of new companies building new types of editing flows for how we create content. Synthesia is one of them, but there are many others. And essentially, these are companies that are trying to figure out what is the best way of creating with these new tools. The way you use Midjourney is very different from how you use Photoshop. The way you use Synthesia is very different from how you use Premiere, for example, right? We need new ways of thinking about what this kind of technology enables. To give you a small example, when you add animations in Synthesia, instead of having to deal with a big timeline like you would in normal video editing, you just tell us that at this particular word, I want an animation to appear. It's much easier, and it's semantically tagged to the script. It may seem like a small thing, but it enables a lot of very interesting stuff down the line. For example, if you translate your video into 10 different languages, you don't have to correct your animations because German is shorter than Spanish. Everything just kind of is responsive, right? And so there's lots of these small tricks that we're figuring out, like how do we work best with AI native content. I think that so far, we've seen the kind of first wave of this next generation video. You're probably all familiar with avatar technology that we were one of the inventors of, video generation through either ChatGPT or latest VO3 being very impressive, AI dubbing, AI video translation, and Copilot, or what we call assisted creation, that helps you not just in generating the actual content, but also writing the script, positioning the elements, and so on and so forth. I'll just give you a short reel here of some of the things we can do in kind of this first wave of next-gen video.
Meet Express 2 avatars. They understand emotions from scripts and translate them into natural gestures.
Now us avatars
can move our hands in line
with what we are saying. Next up, AI dubbing. Translate any video into over 30 languages with perfect lip sync.
Webinar on mastering social media marketing. Je suis ravie que vous soyez avec nous aujourd'hui.
And AI video generation. Create any assets for your video right inside of Synthesia. Last but not least, video assistant. Ask AI to create professional videos with just a few clicks. Meet Express 2 avatars. They understand emotion.
First generation is very much about making the production process easier, right? Not use cameras. You don't have to do subtitles. It's essentially about making it much easier and faster to create content. And that's very powerful when we look at our customer base, which is more than 80% of the Fortune 100. Some of the interesting things is that what these companies are doing are not just saying, we used to make these 10 videos, now we're going to make them with AI, and we're going to save some time and some money. What's happened is that people are now making video around content they would never have made video around before, because of the constraints on time and cost, right? So for example, take your entire knowledge base and customer support portal, take all those text articles and turn them into video, and see a 25% increase in call deflection with one of our customers recently. You would never have done that with a camera, because by the time you're done with the 100 video for your customer support center, it'd already be outdated, right? So it enables us to create new content and videos for all these things we wouldn't have created before. The next generation of video is going to be different. It's going to start with video becoming interactive. So instead of it being a broadcast, static format that you just sit passively and watch, you're going to engage with it. It's going to be videos that you can talk to. You can ask the video a question, or the video can ask you a question. It's going to be deeply personalized the same way we know it from a lot of the software we already use. If you're doing a training video, for example, where you're talking to an instructor, it's going to have full history of all the other training sessions you've had. If you're a salesperson, maybe it has all of your call transcripts, so it knows exactly what to focus on as it teaches you, right? And this is going to be a huge, huge, huge shift from video as we know it today. I think of this in these kind of stages. The first thing is the stage we're in right now, say, where you can generate anything you can imagine. This is incredibly powerful, and we're seeing advancement by this every single month, right? It's really getting very, very, very good. The second one is what we're about to launch at Synthesia pretty soon, which is interactive agentic video experiences, where instead of just watching the video at any point in the video, you can interact with it. I'll show some examples later, but this essentially makes video a two-way conversation instead of a broadcast. Along with that, we can begin to create these video experiences that behave almost more like apps or process automations than just pure consumption. You're going to be able to embed third-party tools. If you want to enable someone to book a call with you inside the video, you're going to be able to pipe all the data that happened in this conversation to your CRM system like HubSpot, your ATS, your LMS, any other system, and essentially create these kind of small apps or widgets. When I was a kid, there was a lot of Flash on the internet, and I don't want to anchor my business to Flash because that didn't go very well, but I remember that as a very fun time at the internet, right? You had a lot of these interactive small experiences that were very easy to create, and I think we'll see something like this as we begin to create these new types of video experiences. Of course, everything is going to work in any language. Our platform today already supports more than 140 languages. With machine translation, you can one-click translate. That's only getting better and better and better. This will help you not just reach your customers and your employees in a very different and more engaging way, also help you do this globally. So in the not-so-distant future, you will be able to do a lot of very cool things on our platform and probably also on other people's platforms. In training, which is a big use case for us, we're going to move away from you consuming the content and actually taking part in it. So if it's sales, for example, and you're being taught a new product line, a new pricing policy, you'll probably start off watching a video like you would already today, but then you'll go into a session where the agent pretends to be a customer, and you have to overcome 20 objections. You essentially train yourself on like you would in a real call, right? Often people do this today with their coach or with their manager. With this, you can do it 24/7 at a very low cost. And these agents will have actually deeper context than a manager will in some cases because they'll have all of your call transcripts. We're also building in systems for evaluations to ensure that you're progressing the way that you should. And this is really going to be like having a one-to-one tutor by your side. And we think the initial results around this is just very, very, very promising. Another exciting use case is things like screening job candidates. So instead of just having your job description on a website, you can turn it into a video. A lot of our customers are already doing this today. Here you can maybe talk about what the job is, sell the company a little bit, but then you can also just interview the candidate right there on the spot. You can collect some basic information using our interactive elements. Maybe you can do a 5-minute case study where they get the chance to shine and show who they are. And in the first phase of this, I don't think this is going to replace necessarily the recruitment process at all. I think it will enhance it. Recruiters can meet in the morning, and the agent will have interviewed 150 people. They can look at the transcripts and figure out, are they good, are they not good? And this will help us look beyond the CV and these other kind of very shallow signals that we use to decide who we get to interview today, right? This is going to be a very exciting one. You're also going to be able to run product demos 24/7 in any language. So today, a lot of you guys' businesses probably rely on the human touch, right? You get on a call with someone that can answer questions, show you the platform. This is increasingly also going to be something we can offer in kind of an agent-centric way, where you can talk to an agent, explain the different products, pull out the right screen recording to show one area of the product, pull up the pricing chart when you're talking about pricing, and essentially help both qualify customers on call, but also just give them something that they can access instantly. So as we move into this new type of video, we're going to be able to engage more, understand much better, and learn much faster. And that's important for every single business out there. For those of you who are already using Synthesia, this is going to be something you're going to be able to do right inside where you're already making your videos, inside the editor. It's been really important to us to build this into the tool, not as a separate product where you have to create an agent. You can just drop an agent in anytime you're making a video. Because it's so easy to create, we really envision that you can create these agents and video experiences for all sorts of different processes. If you want to do an exit interview with employees, you can make an agent for that. If you want to screen a candidate, you can do it for that. If you want to teach something specific, you can make an agent around that. One of the reasons we've been very successful in the past is because we've taken your average PowerPoint user and turned them into a video creator. And we now want to take all those video creators, of which we have millions all over the world, and turn them into agent creators. If this excites you and you may want to take part in the beta, then scan the QR code here. The 1st of October, we're hosting our Synthesia 3.0. We will talk much more about all these new products that we're developing. This is one of the launches I'm personally the most excited about, and I really hope to see a lot of you there and hope to create some very, very cool video experiences together in the future. That was it for my talk. Now I'm going to bring Christina on stage for a quick fireside chat. Thank you so much for listening so far.
Hi everyone, and hi Victor. Great to hear your chat. I'm Christina Criddle. I'm the AI correspondent at the Financial Times. And it's been really interesting to hear how you're seeing media formats changing. TikTok was obviously a revolution in short-form video, and it led to a very passive form of engagement with media. I guess what gives you the confidence that that is changing and that consumers and businesses want things to be more interactive now?
I think there's a lot of signals. I think the most obvious one is, again, if you kind of bring the analogy back to the newspaper and the website, right? I think almost everyone prefers websites because, you know, if you're reading something and you want to find some other piece of information, open a new tab, you can find that information, right? You know things are updated in real time. Like often when you buy a book on Amazon, it's 2 years old, and maybe by the time you receive it, a lot of that information is outdated. So I think we've already seen that people like to interact with the information in a different way. The most recent one, of course, is ChatGPT that has taken the world by storm, right? I think for probably a lot of people in this room, and definitely for myself, that has completely changed the way that I interact with information and how I learn things. So I think all the signals are out there. It's all about building the right user experience for this to be like pleasurable, not just cool, but actually be very useful for people. And I think it's just a matter of time before it happens. And I think we have all the right ideas for how to bring this to market, but it will be kind of a matter of experimenting our way there, right, with our users.
As a newspaper journalist, I obviously still support newspapers and read them frequently, but of course, digital is the king at the moment. I guess I wonder with like business applications, which is what Synthesia does, when you're thinking of these training videos that you can interact with, surely most employees, when they're doing training videos, are like, this is a bit of a chore for me anyway, I just want to get it over and done with. Are they really wanting that like participation in it, or do they just want it to be over and fast?
I think a lot of people today just want it to be over and fast. And I think what we've seen with our customers is, if you give people 40 pages of PDF documents to read, they really just want it to be over with. That's not a very exciting experience, and the information recall for someone reading that is very, very low. Just changing it to video already makes it a lot better. I'm not claiming that everybody loves to watch like a compliance video, but it definitely helps that the media format is more engaging and more interesting, right? I think if you draw the parallel to like if you have PDF documents on the one side as a way to learn something, and maybe on the other side of that scale, if it's sales training, you have like the best salesperson in the company sitting down with you and teaching you one-to-one how to do things. I think that would excite a lot of people. You know, that's a chance to learn from someone who's really good with all the knowledge. We probably can't offer exactly the same type of that experience, but we can move way further along that slider. And I think that what we have seen is, right, people like to talk to ChatGPT, you know, about both their work, but also their personal lives. And I think that it really is enough proof for me that if we do the experience in the right way, we can make them way more engaging, right? But of course, you know, a lot of the stuff will be work. Some of these training videos where experiences will be less exciting than others, and I don't think we can completely change that depending on the subject matter. But I actually think we can create something that's much more engaging, much more fun, because people will feel like they actually are developing and learning.
And in terms of business appetite for implementing AI now, we've obviously had this generative wave for a few years. Are you seeing movement from your clients beyond the pilot stage, looking to a more widespread implementation? And what are some of the examples of that you're seeing?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, look, I think I've been public about this before, but I think like today, 75% of AI products don't actually work. They promise something, and maybe at one point this will be feasible, but a lot of the time it just doesn't work. And I think that's also what we're seeing in the enterprise today. There's so much fear in the enterprise around AI. The boardroom is worried that the business is going to get sidewinded by, you know, some new cool AI company. The people who work in the company are afraid they're going to be replaced by AI. Managers are afraid they won't transform quick enough. So people buy a lot of stuff and experiment with a lot of things. But the truth is that 75% of these things don't work. 20% of them kind of stumble the way there, and 5% of them actually really work. And that's something I think a lot of companies are definitely struggling with. I think for us, it's been a case of really focusing in on where do we actually drive real business value with a great product that has great margins, all the boring things that people sometimes forget in these hype cycles. And that is working phenomenally well. We were public about our numbers a few weeks ago, where we crossed 100 million ARR a couple of months ago in April, and we're at 143% NRR, which means that our customers are expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding. And that's because they're getting value out of it.
How can businesses navigate some of those fears when they're trying to implement products like yours?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think what they're doing is the right way of doing it. You want to experiment. You want to give your staff the ability to use these things and for themselves figure out what works and what doesn't. I think probably what you want to be very careful around is the messaging internally, right? Like, it's okay to buy something or try something and fail. You know, that's fine. There's a lot of, we don't know how all this stuff's going to pan out. So experimentation should be the kind of main way you measure progress, as opposed to saying, okay, you bought two tools that didn't work, that means you're not good enough. And I think a lot of companies are kind of struggling with that, especially bigger companies where the act of procuring software is a very long process.
Well, and expensive.
And very expensive also, right? So I think you have to change your ways a little bit. It's not like when you buy a new, you know, like database or CRM system where the market is very mature. You can look at the 5 best players, you can make an RFP, you can figure out like what works best for you. It doesn't really work like that with most AI tools because they're so early. A lot of them are still experimental. So I think the way you procure software just have to be more flexible than it is for kind of like non-AI software.
I was fascinated to hear about your use case for kind of job applications and interviews, because that's an area that generative AI has completely changed. Now we're having floods of AI-generated CVs. You're getting generative chatbots to answer your application questions. Tell me a bit more about how you see like AI and AI video assisting in this process.
Yeah. So I think that's very right, and everyone's kind of trying to figure out, like, if everyone writes a perfect CV with AI, how do we test for that using AI? And I really think that a lot of what's going to happen, right, is just that these kind of signals, like how well is your CV written, is going to matter a lot less. If you actually can't interview everyone that wants to apply, that's a problem. I mean, we get so many thousands of applications, right? We can't talk to everyone, so there has to be a selection process who we talk to. And unfortunately, that usually ends up being, what companies you work at before, what's your education, which is not always the best way of finding talent. If you can just interview everyone, and it's a live conversation with them where they actually have to answer themselves, then I think you'll get a much better data set to select who should you actually talk to. And I think for the candidates, on the other hand, it gives a chance for someone who may not on paper look like they're the right fit for the role to actually prove that they could do this job really well. I think that's what we're going to move towards. I think it's going to move in general towards these kind of entry-level jobs like SDRs, junior recruiter, etc., being less about being on calls all day and actually more about like helping the AI models assess, of these 100 candidates interviewed yesterday, which one should I actually talk to and take to my manager. I think it's going to change the filtering process on both the job seeker and for the companies for the better.
And how do you think recruiters will feel about that?
The ones we've spoken to, I think, like it, because a lot of these calls that a junior salesperson or a junior recruiter is on is the same call over and over and over again, right? Like you're literally asking the same 10 questions and you're putting it into like a system and then you evaluate and throw it to the next one. So I think during work where you're more evaluating, I think is more interesting and exciting. But of course the job's going to change, right? I'm sure it's going to change. I don't think I have the predictive powers of exactly what's going to happen. But I'm not one of those people who think that all entry-level jobs are just going to be gone in 5 years. I think it's like very simplistic, and I think it's way too technology centric. I think people want to interact with humans. I think it's going to be a really important part of running businesses for forever.
And with that, the avatars are very realistic, and they've gotten better so fast. But you can still tell that they're AI. So what impact does that have on a prospective candidate? Are they going to be put off if they're doing this kind of interview with not a real person, and then when they get to the company, all of their first interactions are going to be these training videos with not real people? What might that impact be on a new hire?
So it's very interesting because we launched the Avatar product in 2020, right? And for the first many years, this was such a big question every time we would close a customer, and also for ourselves, right? It's like, how do people actually react to these videos? And I've always found that it's one of those things that's like, it's philosophically very interesting to think about. And a lot of people have like, well, maybe I wouldn't like it, whatever. I think the reality is that in practice, you start a new job, you're going to go through a 2-week training period, and you know that most of the time you're going to have like written materials to read through, which is not very fun. And so when you compare like in actual practicality, do you prefer to watch these like avatar videos that are, for most people at least, more engaging and better made than like reading a document? Most people choose that. We did some research around this actually, and interestingly, it turned out that like more people prefer the avatars than real people filming themselves, because the avatars are much more concise and to the point, whereas humans recording themselves is like most people's version of hell is like having to watch someone else's Zoom call for 1 hour, right? That's not like very engaging. So what we find out there is just that people actually prefer it. I'm sure there's some people that don't like it, but in general, I think it's a very practical thing. I think people feel differently about it if it's like, would you watch a TV series that's entirely generated with avatars? Because that's you sitting down, choosing to be entertained, and having all the choice in the world of all the content you could choose to watch. Whereas in a work setting, right, it's kind of, I think people think about it differently.
And you mentioned the human touch and the need to sort of guarantee there are some places for humans still, and there are circumstances where you would want a human. What are those sort of definite human-only interactions that you need to guarantee?
I think a lot of it is when you decide to take a job, you don't purely just take it based off like data you can put in a spreadsheet, right? It's often about like, do you feel a connection with the people that you're going to be working with? And I think a lot of this stuff will still have to be human-driven. Just like in a sales process, I mean, the reason sales, not the reason salespeople exist, but a big part of it is the fact that people want someone to call. They want someone to take them through the process. They want to feel like there's something they can pick up the phone and call if something doesn't work. So I think a lot of that will remain, and there'll be a lot of the kind of process stuff and the repeatable parts of this that will be automated. But I still think that like enterprise sales, for example, people want someone to call. They'll want like that's a relationship you're forming with someone else, and I think that's for both the buyer and the seller. I think is very important.
And this is perhaps more in the entertainment category than the professional category, but there is a concern about increasingly AI-generated material and that leading to slop, people call it, but increasingly like homogenized content where we're just seeing a lot of the same low-quality content flooding our media. Do you think that's a real risk, and how can we combat it?
For sure. I mean, it's an interesting, like, how do you judge what's slop and what's not slop, right? One argument could be, well, if people on Instagram like those videos, then maybe that's okay, and we're just being elitist. I don't think that's the right way of thinking about it, but that is one way you could think about it, right? I think what we're facing now is just so much content being generated in such a short amount of time. A lot of it, like, for kind of shock factor, especially in the video space. There's already a deluge of content on YouTube, and on YouTube it's like 99 point something of the videos have no more than 10 views. So I think it's more like a curation question, and I think what we will see is that platforms probably will build in signals where like AI-generated content, the bar has to be higher for that to kind of be higher up in the curation stack of what we actually want to show people, right? Ultimately, I think a lot of it will depend on how consumers react to it, overtly or inadvertently. But I think it is a problem. I think we are seeing a lot of low-quality AI-generated content. My favorite example of this is still, I think, is with text on Google search, right? I think for a lot of people, myself included, I don't really trust Google search. If I Google like product review of something, I know the first 10 pages is people who've optimized their page for me to click on it and to buy the product. So I don't trust it, so I put Reddit after it, which a lot of people do because you feel like that's a more trustworthy and honest way of doing it. So there's going to be a lot of challenges around this stuff to figure out like how we do it well. I don't think I have the answer, but there's no doubt that there will be a lot of low-quality content, and sifting through it is a challenge.
I saw the pasta car with cucumber wheels in your video. Was that a professional use case, and how much are you seeing people being more inventive in their sort of corporate settings because they have these tools?
That's a great question. So we're definitely seeing the floor of the content going up massively, right? The avatars was kind of the first iteration. So some people who made video before avatars would maybe just take a PowerPoint and then just record themselves talking over it. That's a very boring video. Then you add an avatar, now there's a bit more life, there's something to look at, a bit more interesting. What we're seeing now with all these new video models is that you can generate, a training video that may, in the big picture, not be very important, but it can look like you had an advertising agency that actually made it, right? One example I love is we work with a big manufacturing company, and in their manufacturing sites, you're not allowed to bring in chocolate for whatever reason. That's like very bad. You cannot bring chocolate into this place. And so what they used to have is like a video of an avatar saying no chocolate with a chocolate bar and an X over it. And then now as we launched these features, they showed us as well, actually now we've made it much more fun. And there's like this AI-generated video of this huge chocolate bar that like barges into the factory and like something explodes, and it says like you absolutely cannot like bring chocolate in here. And it's kind of a fun example because it took someone like 10 minutes of like prompting to get to that. It looks like it was like a special effects made in Hollywood. And it just catches people's attention much more than kind of a more boring corporate training video. So what we'll see, I think, is, and I think way before we see AI-generated Hollywood films, is that the sort of lower end of the content, all this content is going to be much higher quality because people can make it high quality. So we always have this thing internally, like if your training video for, understanding your pricing policy could look like a Steven Spielberg film, why wouldn't it, right? And very soon we're at the point where there's no reason that it couldn't.
That's very fun. I would be very upset if I wasn't allowed to take chocolate into my workplace, though. Thank you so much, Victor, for taking the time to speak to me. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.